Chapter 49, Divination Art. As a seer who had just stepped through the gates of mysticism, Klein did not dare to claim he knew much. However, he was certain he knew more than ordinary people. He was aware that the various kinds of divination arts could be split into 3 categories based on particular standards. And that standard was based on the source of the revelation. The first category of divination included tarot, poker, pendulums, dowsing canes, and dreams. By using the inquirer's own spirituality and its communication with the spirit world to gain a revelation, it could be interpreted for an answer. However, spirit pendulums and dowsing canes had very high requirements of one's spirituality, soul body, and astral projection. Non-beyonders were unable to obtain precise or clear revelations. Card divination provided fixed symbolism, presenting even an average person's faint revelation. Dreams were somewhere in between the other forms. The second category included spirit numerology and astromancy, as well as their derived forms. The fortune teller used either the personal details of the inquirer or changes in nature before using calculations, inference, and interpretation to answer their questions. With this method, the initiative did not lie in the inquirer, but the fortune teller. The third category used an external third party, separate from the inquirer and the fortune teller. The Ouija boards that Klein was familiar with from his previous life belonged in this category. They used rituals to ask for a direct answer from the unknown or the supernatural. Even though there was a high chance that an average person would not succeed, there were cases where they managed to communicate with malicious spirits or entities that drove them to insanity. These methods of divination usually led to tragedies. The magic mirror divination that Hannes Vincent mentioned belonged to the third category. In mysticism, mirrors were connected to the unknown and mystery, like they were the doors of the spiritual world. Thus, Klein stopped outside the meeting room, intending to learn how the famous fortune teller would explain the divination. Klein wanted to ascertain if he needed to inform the captain or not, raiding him at night. Of course, there was a safe way to do the magic mirror divination. One could ask for answers from the 7 orthodox divinities. Even if it was very difficult for an ordinary person to receive any real revelations, they would not be in any danger or suffer any after effects. The magic mirror divinations that were strictly controlled by the Nighthawks and mandated punishers were those that asked evil gods or mysterious existences for help. Furthermore, the fortune teller couldn't randomly fabricate things. Some phrases or qualities had the potential to invite the attention of unknown entities. In the world where the powers of the Beyonders exist, such divinations would often lead to tragedy. Klein even suspected that the original Klein, Welch, and Naya had committed such a forbidden divination by following the instructions of the Antigonus family's diary. At that moment, Hannes also explained the principle behind magic mirror divination and described the actual process. First, you choose a suitable time and date according to the divinity you believe in. You can decide this using the astromancy manual. For example, we all know that Sundays symbolize the Evernight goddess, for Sunday is the embodiment of rest. 2 to 3 in the early morning, 9 to 10 in the morning, 4 to 5 in the evening, and 11 to midnight are all related to the moon. Thus, they are controlled by the Evernight goddess. Thus, fortune tellers that pray to the Evernight goddess can use magic mirror divination during these times on a Sunday. Quite a good foundation. Klein nodded slightly while using the half-closed door to the meeting room to conceal himself. It had to be said that with the 7 major churches keeping each other in check, some mysticism knowledge had indeed leaked. For example, many of the meanings behind the symbolism could be found in the astromancy manual. However, without the potions or beyonder powers, ordinary people were unable to obtain the desired effects. Second, we must scrutinize the mirror carefully. It must be a mirror coated with silver. You place the mirror at the position representing the moon. Hannes demonstrated with the prop in his hand. No, what he needs now is spirit dowsing. First, choose a position and recite the phrase. This place is suitable for magic mirror divination, 7 times in your head. Then see which direction the pendulum turns. Clockwise for true, counterclockwise for false. Of course, if you are asking for answers from a malicious supernatural entity, the position would not matter. Rather, it would depend on whether the entity is interested in answering your questions. Klein silently corrected him. At this point, he felt like a teacher listening in on a lesson. Hannes Vincent could not hear Klein's mental musings as he described the preparations in detail in a normal tone. When the members finished taking notes, he continued explaining. After showering, confirm that you have drawn all your curtains and locked your doors. After that, light up a candle and place it in front of the mirror before sincerely praying to the divinity you believe in. Try to keep your questions simple, as there's no need for fanciful embellishment. After praying 7 times, pick up your mirror and gently toss it on the ground. Make sure to be gentle. Remember the way it shatters, as that is a revelation from the gods. I will tell you the main symbolisms in a second. Phew, this is orthodox magic mirror divination. Klein heaved a sigh of relief as he walked into the meeting room and sat back down in his previous seat. He finished the rest of his Southville coffee in one gulp. So-called orthodox divination meant that it was possible to obtain revelations, but it was impossible to truly interpret it. And for beyonders who reached this step, they could look straight into the mirror to obtain clear information if they received a response. As there were many potential symbolisms after the shattering, Hanas taught for a long while. He was not done even when Edward Steve returned to the room after finishing his fortune-telling. Klein did not ask what Edward did for his fortune-telling, or what method did he use, since it was an unspoken rule among fortune-tellers. While acting as a seer, he naturally had to abide by it strictly unless the other party mentioned it. I discovered that many a time, our interpretation is too vague, as though it's meeting different requests, allowing different people to find a description of themselves from the interpretation. Edward drank a mouthful of black tea and said with a soft sigh, "For example, those that encounter adversities and calamities will eventually see the light of hope. Heh, but no one knows when the light of hope will come. For example, a journey might not be very smooth sailing, but you will definitely arrive alive. The dead will not retort me." As he did not listen from the beginning, he ignored Hannes's magic mirror divination class. Survival bias, added Klein with a smile. Survival bias generally meant that a lot of statistics would only include those who were alive and lucky. The data would ignore the dead, therefore, the results would be clearly biased. Right. Emperor Roselle was really a philosopher, marveled Edward. Speechless, Klein raised his empty cup and pretended to take a sip. The members were fully immersed in the study of horoscopes and magic mirror divination the entire afternoon. Occasionally, they would also discuss with Klein and Edward, and when that happened, Klein would try his best to meet his duty as an informal member of the Nighthawks. He would try hard to steer the topic away from anything related to beyonders or dangerous ideas. However, he failed at the thing he wanted to do the most. A few inquirers came, but none of them picked him to do their fortune-telling. Perhaps I have to be more proactive in entertaining them. Should I use a few phrases like, "You are plagued with bad luck," "You have been unlucky recently," or "Nothing you do will happen smoothly"? No, that's nothing like a seer. With this in mind, Klein could not help but shake his head in self-deprecation. He picked up his cane, stood up, and left after bidding everyone farewell. At 5:30, Edward Steve put on his coat and was prepared to walk out the Divination Club when he suddenly saw a familiar figure. "Good afternoon, Glassy. Long time no see," he greeted with a smile. He saw his friend with similar interests as him wear his usual format suit with a black bow tie. In front of his chest hung a monocle. Immediately following that, he noticed that his friend did not look well. Even his soft blonde hair looked dry. "Good afternoon, Edward." Cough. Glassy, with his hat in hand, suddenly used his fist to cover his mouth as he coughed a few times. Edward asked out of concern, "You seem to be ill." "A very serious illness. It even turned into pneumonia. If it wasn't for my wife, who met an impressive apothecary and gave me a magical medicine, you would have probably had to visit me at the cemetery." Glassy's tone was filled with a lingering fear and joy. "Lord, I can't believe it. You were so healthy previously. Look at you, you look so frail now. I remember when I did divination on you, there were no signs that indicated that you would get a serious illness." Edward waved his cane and said with an astonished sigh, "My own divination had the same result as yours. Perhaps we are not qualified fortune-tellers. Besides," Glassy suddenly recalled the happenings on Monday as his expression turned abnormally serious. At that moment, the beautiful lady, Angelica, came over and bowed with a pleasant smile. After exchanging greetings, she first showed concern for Glassy's health and provided some suggestions. Then she mentioned in passing, "Mr. Glassy, Mr. Moretti, who requested your divination services previously, has joined our club as well." "The one who got me to tell his fortune?" Glassy's eyes lit up immediately. "Lord, where is he?" "He just left." Angelica and Edward were unable to comprehend Glassy's abnormal reaction. Glassy took 2 steps in agitation and said, "The next time he comes, please ask him when he will come if I'm not around." "Glassy, what happened? Did that Mr. Klein Moretti do something to you?" asked Edward in puzzlement. Glassy raised his arm and stared straight into Edward's and Angelica's probing gazes. He said in excitement, "He's a very, very, very magical." He lowered his arm and said after using very thrice, "Doctor,